हेलो दोस्तों, वेलकम बैक। फिर से एक बार आप सभी का स्वागत है मेरे इस YouTube चैनल पे। उम्मीद करते हैं कि आप सब लोग इस विश्व की इतने बड़े संकट में सब लोग सुरक्षित हैं। ऑल आर वेल एंड इन द टाइम ऑफ लॉकडाउन you all students are requested as well as suggested to study well, to keep yourself healthy, and in coming times we all will be winner. So once again I welcome you all. Today I will discuss the topic debates on the decline of political theory and resurgence of political theory. In this video I will be focusing on the first part of the topic, that is the various debates on the decline of political theory. And in the next video I will be discussing about the resurgence of political theory. Before starting this lecture, a small announcement, a small request, a humble submission to you from my side, that if you have yet not subscribed my channel, please subscribe it, please watch it, share it, like it, and make some constructive comments. Okay, thank you. I am Vivek Kumar Hind, currently working as assistant professor in the Department of Political Science, Tilka Manjhi, Bhagalpur University, Bhagalpur in Bihar. Okay, so this is today's lecture is based on the theme, and this topic is very important for the undergraduate students, for postgraduate students, as well as for the students who are preparing for the civil services examination with political science and international relations as an optional. This topic and my lecture series will also be of extremely helpful for those students who are seriously preparing for UGC NTA, UGC NET or National Testing Agency exam. So please focus and make some important points, make some good notes, as I have prepared this PPT, this PowerPoint presentation. I will be elaborating the important ideas, important concepts, important thinkers, and the most important thing, I will be focusing on some of the names of important books with the year of publication, so that this video can be very helpful for you. Sometimes UGC ask the name of books and author, and in fact sometimes they may ask you the order, in which order these books were published, which book came first, which book was published later. So please remember the book name, author name, as well as the year of publication. Okay, so now what are the debates on the decline of political theory? Traditionally, if we see, political theory focused on the study of the state as a moral society. So previously what happened, all the theorists, all the philosophers, most of the philosophers used to focus on historical approach, philosophical approach, and institutional approach to the study of political science. But after World War II, when the academic location or academic discourses shifted from east of Atlantic to the west of Atlantic, that is in the United States and Canada, things started to change. So we can see this was the time when scholars started to believe that traditional political theory was not able to save the world crisis which took place in the form of two great world wars. We all are aware that First World War took place in between 1914 to 1918, and Second World War took place between 1939 to 1949. So people started debate that since these political theories have failed to protect democracy, failed to protect republican nature of the state, failed to establish the peace process, therefore political theory is of no use. Scholars like David Easton, scholars like the Coban, etc., declared political science as dead. At the time, different school of thought like empiricist, which is called Anubhavavadi, positivist, and behavioralist, and apart from these school of thought, others also started to argue about the decline of political theory. So, what were the basic reasons of decline? If we see, scholars like Charles Merriam, Harold Laswell, Robert Dahl, David Easton, and others rose against the classical political theory. Classical political theory, as I told you, were more in nature, it was historical, philosophical, and institutional. Therefore, they identified certain defects or certain drawbacks or certain challenges before political science, so that in coming times they could revise or they could improve the status or the study of political science and could make the study of political theory more relevant and action oriented. So there were basically five reasons which are identified as the reasons of decline of political theory. First is the historicism. Historicism means most of the scholars, if we see, or most of the classical thinkers, they have focused on historical aspects or historical development of institutions like state, government, etc. Second point was it was more relativism. At the same time, it was more hyperfactualism, means factual information was overloaded in the traditional understanding of the subject. By this time, technological revolution took place. Therefore, political theories were, or political theorists or political philosophers were not able to cope up with the changing technological revolutions in all across the world. And the last one is the inadequacies of traditional theories. Traditional theories were not able to cope up with the emerging challenges after World War II. Therefore, people started to talk about either certain revision, and some people talked about the death of the political theory. So, first big name in this issue comes David Easton. David Easton was one of the greatest scholar of 20th century, and his most important book was Political Science, an inquiry into the state of political science. This book was published in the year 1953 when he was chairing the International Political Science Association. In this book, he argued that traditional political theory was merely based on speculation. It was necessary to save it from the study of classics and the history of political classics. David Easton was the first thinker who is systematically pointing out the problems or challenges before political theories, though people before him had already started talking about the decline. So, traditional political theory, as per David Easton, he believed that it was the product of the turmoil that characterized the past ages. For example, in Greek, if we see when Plato coming into the scene, at that time the society, the social structure, and the political condition of Greek was not in a state of civil war. And at that time, Plato is talking about establishing ideal state and the concept of philosopher king. Second example can be taken from Italy when the Renaissance took place, and certain Renaissance philosophers emerged because Italy was not politically stable. In fact, the great political theorist Niccolo Machiavelli was also the product of its time, that was the Renaissance. And if we see in 16th and 17th centuries AD in England, we see that 16th and 17th centuries, it was a period of civil war in England. And in the same way, in 18th century, if we see, France and America got independence and they established republican form of government and democratic form of government. So Easton argued, or Easton believed, that no outstanding philosopher came after Karl Marx and John Stuart Mill. Therefore, David Easton is giving the idea of behavioralism to save political theory. And as we all know, behavioralism is one of the important contribution of David Easton, and behavioralism is also very important topic for the political science students. So, behavioralism or the behavioral approach was developed by American scholars, particularly after World War II. Though its origins may be traced with the writings of Graham Wallace, and his famous book was Human Nature in Politics, and Arthur Bentley, his famous book was The Process of Government. Please remember the name of these books. Both books were published in the year 1908. These people had challenged the ideas of laissez-faire philosophy, which was propounded by Adam Smith in his famous book, The Wealth of Nations, 1776. Please remember Adam Smith and his book name, The Wealth of Nations, where he is talking about the concept of laissez-faire. And laissez-faire talked about human nature, and it believed human beings were as a rational creature, and Adam Smith argued that human beings, since they are rational, they are able to take decisions what is best for them. But Graham Wallace and Arthur Bentley challenged that notion and argued people are not that rational as far as political actions are concerned. It means people are not taking decisions or behaving rationally in relation to their political actions. And this was the most important reason this world community, world society could not prevent these world wars. So now talking specifically about Charles Merriam. Charles Merriam, again one of the greatest scholar of behavioral movement, and in fact he is also considered as the father of Chicago School and was one of the most important scholars on behaviorism. Charles Merriam's famous book, please keep in mind, his famous book is New Aspect of Politics, which was published in the year 1925. Then Harold Laswell, again one of the important books and one of the important thinker of behavioral movement. Harold Laswell, his books was Politics, Who Gets What, When and How, which was published in the year 1936. These scholars tried to study political theory in sociological and psychological perspectives. Therefore, they focused on sociological and psychological aspects of political actions of human beings. So please, again I request you, remember these names and the title of the books and the year in which year these books were published, and at least try to remember the important points what is being taught in these particular books. Now, David Easton. Technically speaking, David Easton is considered the father of behavioral movement, because before David Easton, nobody could, in actual sense, could suggest certain flaws and certain measures to reform this political theory. So David Easton is giving or is identifying 8 important tenets of behavioralism, that are regularities, verification, techniques, quantification, values, systematization, pure sciences, and integration. Please remember, sometime in examinations they may ask you what are the 8 important tenets of behavioralism. So please remember these 8 tenets. This is very, very, very important for the purpose of competitive examinations. So by these 8 tenets we can see that David Easton is basically trying to make political science studies or political theories as more like a natural science rather than a social sciences. Though it was criticized, and later on in the year 1960, David Easton makes certain reforms in the form of post-behavioralism, where his main focus is action and relevance. These action and relevance, these words, these concepts, these ideas were later on it was added. Now the second scholar, that is Alfred Coban. In fact, his book title is The Decline of Political Theory. It was published in the year 1953 in the world famous journal that was Political Science Quarterly. In this book, his paper was published, The Decline of Political Theory, and his main ideas is political theory had lost its significance in capitalist as well as in communist societies. Please emphasize, I again repeat this sentence. Political theory had lost its significance in capitalist as well as in communist societies. Capitalist systems were inspired by the idea of libertarian democracy, where there was no political theorist of democracy. It means that by and large these capitalist systems had adopted or they had accommodated the certain changes which were taking place in society. Therefore, these capitalist system or capitalist countries could survive in its own. At the same time, two important changes took place more or less in all across the world. That was the role of bureaucracy. It means the active role of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy was there in earlier times also, but post World War II era we see role of active bureaucracy and emphasize on a strong military. These two things had taken lead role in all across the world. In fact, in communist societies, also political theory was in back foot, because we see in Soviet Russia and in Soviet China, in communist China and other smaller countries where communism and socialism had taken place, they were also not able to they were also not interested in any kind of flexibility, or they were not flexible in their approach. Therefore, Alfred Coban argued that great philosophers, even he is raising questions against philosophers like Friedrich Hegel and Karl Marx. Coban argued that even these great scholars were interested in the study of a small part of the universe. Even these people were not trying to understand the processes of developments, of social development or political developments in a very comprehensive way. That's why perhaps this is one of the reason the German idea of Marxism, because Karl Marx was basically a German thinker and Hegel also a German thinker. We can see these philosophy of Marxism emerged and developed in Europe, but it was never applied, or never any country could adopt the true path of communism or socialism in true sense. So Hegel was primarily concerned with territorial state, and Marx was interested in the study of proletariat class. Friends, if you have any doubt, any query, please make comments or make your suggestions in the comment box, so that accordingly I will be able to solve your queries. I will try to answer your queries. Okay. So Alfred Coban says that contemporary politics operates in such a large scale that it could not be analyzed in the light of any partial or narrow theory. So please remember, even Coban challenges the ideas of Hegel and Marx, and he blames these philosophers that because they were not able to study in a comprehensive scale, that's why this was one of the important factor which led to the debates of the decline of political theory. So in this series, the last but never the least, because these topics are very lengthy, but I have tried to sum up some very fundamental thinkers and some fundamental issues. So please, if I will if I explore in very detail, perhaps the video will go longer and longer. So I will sum up with this last man, that is Seymour Martin Lipset, S.M. Lipset. And again, please remember this book, his book, that is Political Man, The Social Basis of Politics, which was published in the year 1960. S.M. Lipset, he argued in this book that values of contemporary society had already been decided. Values of contemporary society had already been decided. In America and in most of the Western European societies, countries, a long search for a good society had come to an end with the establishment of constitutional government, parliamentary democracy, etc. Their democracy was the closest approximation to the good society itself which was in operation. Therefore, nobody was now much more interested in any kind of refinement and any kind of reforms in these theories or ideas. So, S.M. Lipset is also talking about this. So in the next lecture, I will focus on the second part of the topic, that is resurgence, how the debate of resurgence of political theory is taking place, and who were the important thinkers, important philosophers, and what were their important contributions. So please keep watching and please subscribe the channel so that you will be able to get benefit from my lectures. And if you have any query, if you have any suggestions, you may please message me in the comment box of which is below of the channel. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.